Let us explore the first verse of the Great Garuda in Flight, a Dzogchen classic. Excuse me, I'm wrestling with my cables. Okay, here we go. This is the third of the Avaruchana's early translations of Prahevajra's Ati-yoga works. Prahevajra was a great Buddhist reformer who lived in the Swat Valley of present-day Pakistan. Let's recite. Let's relaxingly recite. The teaching of the inexpressible state is without abode or support. To generate a Mahayoga dimension of subtle aspects and intentions is a pointless investigation. A conceptual meditation on the manifestation of truth, self-originated. So this is a break in thought, the semicolon. Self-originated pristine awareness abides just as it is, entirely free of contrived thinking. There's a lot of information here. I'll try to make sense of it concisely. I don't want to exhaust people. So, lots of people want to be peaceful and loving. That's great. That's useful. Because what's the alternative? To be anxious and aggressive? That's no fun. It's great to have survival instincts, and they are wonderful in an emergency situation. But if they are our default mechanism, we're going to have very unfulfilling lives. The key to a fulfilling life is cooperation. The key to cooperation is peace and love. Good to know. When one reads the Hebrew scriptures comprising the first 3/4 of the Christian Bible, one comes across a session where the Israelites asked the prophet to tell God that we want to be just like the other nations and have a king. So that's nothing new. When I was a little boy, before first grade, I had a next door neighbor named Christopher, and whenever Christopher's parents got him, I promptly reported to my parents in hopes they would do likewise, which they did not. So jealousy and envy and competitiveness are normal and natural. If not destructive, but normal and natural. And so many, many, many centuries ago, some Buddhists looked at the Hindus and said, they've got some really cool practices. Let's do Buddhist versions of those really cool practices. And of course, it would have been helpful if I said the history of Buddhism can be charted in terms of Proto-Buddhism and institutional Buddhism. Proto-Buddhism, everything was groovy. Institutional Buddhism, things became really cranky and rigid and superstitious. So I've said all that to say this. There was a point when people started taking Hindu technologies, Hindu practices, and adapting them for what they thought was for institutional Buddhism. And that gave us something known as Mahayoga and Anu Yoga, practices about ritual and offering and invocation and visualization, as well as techniques designed to manipulate our own channels, winds, and drops. Kundalini and the like. But what we're being told here, what we're being reminded is we don't need a special teacher, special companions, a special place, a special time, or a special person to practice the Buddha's teachings. We can practice them just as we are, flaws and all. We don't need special supports. We don't need tchotchkes. We don't need special tools. We don't need ritual implements. We don't need blessings. We don't need tantric empowerments. We don't need rituals or visualizations or invocations or secret techniques. And then this idea is elaborated upon. To generate a Mahayoga dimension of subtle aspects and intentions is a pointless investigation, a conceptual meditation on the manifestation of truth. So we don't need to visualize that all minds of all beings look like a syllable. We don't need to visualize that each being's experience of the interpersonal now becomes a mantra. We don't need to visualize how all bodies of all beings now become like what we might see in Buddhist art, a body, beautiful, half-naked, wearing silks and ornaments comprised only of bliss-inducing light. We don't need to visualize that all environments are paradises. We don't need to do this as an act of wishing love. We don't need to do this as an act of profound, so-called profound wisdom, exploring how all minds are, or contriving how all minds are lucid yet void, how experiences of the interpersonal are resounding yet void. We don't need to actively contemplate how all bodies are sensual yet void. We don't need to contemplate how all circumstances are appearing yet void. Those things are pious sounding, but they do more harm than good. We don't need to manipulate our body and our energy to contrive a specific mental or emotional or sensual state. That is an analog of enlightenment. The enlightenment Buddha offers us is the ability to cope with whatever mood, perception, intention, thoughts, memory, or imagining befalls us. What the Buddha offers us is self-originated, pristine awareness. And that's a lot of jargon. So let's explore this. To do that, I'm going to tap button 9. So when we say awareness, this is what we mean. Every time, so mindfulness is just a fancy way of saying noticing. Every time we breathe in, our sympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord, has already evolved to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination. It is safe for us to notice whatever comes up randomly, whether that which comes up is external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. But what do we do? So that's what we mean by awareness. Now the question remains, what do we do with that which comes up? Because sometimes that which comes up can be boring or disturbing. Sometimes. Look at the news, and there's plenty of disturbing things. That brings us to meditation. Meditation is just a fancy way of physically relaxing and mentally releasing in harmony with our exhalation. You see, every time we exhale, our parasympathetic nervous system, divided between the lower third and the upper third of that same spinal cord, has evolved to physically relax and mentally release to such a degree that that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and less defining. To take it now, that's a literal phenomenon. Now let's explore this figuratively. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void, like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although it could look tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. That's what we mean by pristine. Whatever violence, whatever rage, whatever terror, whatever despair we might perceive or notice as we inhale is tamed and neutered and put in a muzzle by the very act of relaxing. That's what we mean by pristine awareness. Let's go back to the root text. Let's see, I'm going to tap button 14. Self-originated. So we talked about pristine awareness, noticing and relaxing. What do we mean by self-originated? So what we notice comes up spontaneously. We don't have a checklist. We don't have an agenda. If somebody gives you a checklist or an agenda, they might mean well, but they've departed from the Buddha's teachings. They've departed from Prahevajra's teachings. They've departed from Ati Yoga. They might not know it, but they have. Self-originated is another way of saying spontaneous. Most of us were raised not to be spontaneous. In fact, reach for a visual aid. I'm going to return to button 9. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, including human beings. The majority of us were raised to believe that to traverse the path of Yang's religious or irreligious patriarchy, we were raised to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. That is not the path of the Buddha. That is the path of the Buddha's foolish cousin, Devadatta. What's the path of the Buddha? Yin's spiritual matriarchy. Being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So being flexible and laid back is a great way of describing spontaneity. Being rigid and controlling is not a good way of describing spontaneity. If we wish to be peaceful, if we wish to be loving, if we wish to be resilient, the way to do that is not through contrivance, nor is it through scattered spontaneity. The only way to do that is through centered spontaneity. So let's return to the practice text. Self-originated, pristine awareness abides just as it is, entirely free of contrived thinking. And I think for future classes, it would be better if I put the page break right there and then hit. Make sure this fits. That's always a good thing to do. There we go. Less confusion. Whoops. Self-originated pristine awareness abides just as it is, entirely free of contrived thinking. What's the most efficient way to free ourselves of contrived thinking? Mindfulness and meditation. And we will explore that. And that is what we're going to do. That's what we're going to practice after just about less than a minute of, what's the word I'm looking for? Housekeeping. It is Rey Skywalker Sunday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is the Dzogchen Sunday Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests as well as my ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day. Oopsie, that was exciting. Studying, practicing, mastering, and studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. For the remainder of this morning's live stream, we're going to play or work from the latest iteration of Very Easy Meditation Practice Text, or Sadhana, if you're nasty. So, as we go through life, with every respiration, we're faced with a choice. Do we passively cooperate with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems comprising the autonomic nervous system that the ancients referred to as our Buddha nature, or do we actively compete against them by over-focusing and over-analyzing, by exhausting our prefrontal cortex, thus causing us to present with symptoms of depression and trigger our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety or aggression? Or do we passively cooperate with the two facets of our autonomic nervous system in such a way as to calm our amygdala and gently stimulate our anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy, the root of both compassion and love? Sounds great. Sign me up. How do we do it, though? How do we passively cooperate with the sympathetic and parasympathetic aspects of our autonomic nervous system? The answer is so simple. Each time we feel air enter our nostrils, silently and mentally, we could recite the demonstrative pronoun this. Each time we feel air exit our nostrils, we could silently and mentally recite the one syllable verb, ease. It took me a long time to learn this. I didn't figure it out. I had to be taught by multiple teachers, by Lama Gyatso, by Bakutuku. So I'm very grateful that I received these instructions. I share them with you, hoping that you will master them and that someday you'll be so bright and shining that people will come to you and ask for meditation advice. After years of experience, you'll be able to guide them as well. Because I think humanity could use a bit more peace and love. Having said all of that, let's practice. We can perform this lying down. We can perform this walking around the block. We can perform this sitting as sustainably as we know how. So together, let us practice. Now, the moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions approximately every 13 minutes or so. Let's dig in. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 3/4 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class as well as group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.